I'm Haseeb Shaikh, and by profession I'm a naturalist. A naturalist is a person who works for nature, for wildlife, and for conservation. And he knows a little bit about wildlife, about trees and plants, wildlife in general, about birds, mammals, reptiles, and then he works and strives, he or she works and strives for the conservation and to make this planet a better planet with all the natural resources as they are. Voices out against the exploitation of our planet Earth, where in our Indian society we often call the planet Earth as our mother, and we should respect it. So I'm first of all I'm thankful to the Visamo Kids organization, or the Visamo Kid Foundation, that invited me to be on air live and to talk to the audience. I would also like to thank Himali Acharya, who works as a counselor with the Visamo Kids Foundation, and she's the one who pointed me out to the Visamo organization, saying that I should be the one who should go about online and talk to people about nature, wildlife, and conservation. So I'm from Ahmedabad. I'm a wildlifer, I'm a naturalist, I'm a wildlife artist. I do a lot of sketches on wildlife, and I go around to different forests here in Gujarat and all over India to study animals, to share my opinion about why nature should be left as it is. So that's what the naturalist does basically. I've been fortunate enough to be in the lap of nature and conservation, and I've been fortunate enough to go on over this period of 30 years in my career to different forests and different beautiful places here in India, and to work on various things such as trees and plants, birds and animals. Throughout my 30 years career as a lover of nature, as somebody who is a nature freak, who loves nature and who loves the wildlife, it taught me the art of rescuing animals and reptiles and birds. I also officially am a volunteer for rescuing snakes and crocodiles here in Ahmedabad and Baroda cities of Gujarat. So it's not a profession altogether. It's something that you do because you love it, because of your love and your respect for nature and for respect for wildlife, and that's how you become a naturalist. You need a dedicated approach for conservation of wildlife, for conservation of nature. You need a dedicated approach to accept the fact that along with the humans, the insects, reptiles, amphibians, the plants themselves, the animals, the mammals, the birds, they have an equal right on this planet to live and to live in peace. And throughout our this modern age, that so-called modern age that we are going through, we have always seen and we have always wondered that we have destroyed so much of our natural habitats which belong to the birds and animals and reptiles, and we have started making these so-called magnificent buildings and roads and bridges and whatnot, just to accommodate ourselves, just to make a human life far more easier, and to destroy the animals, the birds and the plants. And that's the reason why we are facing so much of trouble all over the globe. The global warming concept itself, the greenhouse gases emissions itself, these are all the byproducts of the human destruction that has been caused all over the place. So in my 30 years career, I have developed these 3 rules for myself, which I usually follow, and which I share with a lot of people that people that know me and people that invite me to different places for talks on nature and conservation. Rule number 1 is that everything in nature, every living thing in nature, you may like it or you may not, has a role to perform. And it has a right to survive. It has a right to live. Whether you like it or not. There are so many people who said, how come you like snakes and you're rescuing snakes with ease and crocodiles with ease. But the bottom line is that at the end of the day, they have a right to survive, just as we humans do. And therefore, every living thing, whether we like it or we don't. See, I myself am a naturalist, doesn't mean that I like everything. I might be rescuing snakes, I might be rescuing pythons, I might be rescuing other big, huge animals who may, which scare people normally. But I myself am kind of very jittery about a small thing like a caterpillar. A caterpillar still scares me, despite, I rescue so many big animals and reptiles and birds. But the caterpillar does give me a scare, still today. So, but it has a right to survive. If there are no caterpillars, there are no butterflies. And if there are no butterflies, there's a big drop in pollination process for the plants. And then the plants and the shrubs, they don't grow. And when they don't grow, the herbivores die. And the herbivores die, the carnivores die. And that's the end of the world. So rule number one, everything that you see in nature, everything that you go around seeing in nature, whether you like it or you don't like it, it has a right to survive and it has a role to perform. Rule number two, extinction of one species will lead to extinction of many other species. It's a chain. It's a chain. A bird comes, packs up an insect, and it flies away, and it feeds the insect to the young ones because they need it to grow. So if we put on, chemical fertilizers, if we keep on throwing them in our fields just because we want to make more money out of it, because of we need more crops, and these chemical fertilizers are then affect the small insects that thrive upon them. Now when there are no insects, the birds do not get anything to feed to the young ones, so they die. And when the birds and the insects are not there, a lot of pollination doesn't happen with the trees and plants. And then trees and plants die. And when the trees and plants die, the herbivore animals start to die because they don't get enough food. And the herbivorous animals are not there. So the carnivores die because they don't get herbivores to eat because it's their diet. And they need to survive upon them. It's their prey. So it's a chain process that goes up and down. So if we lose something, we lose other things. If we lose one species, we lose other species. Every species is dependent on another species. Every species is dependent on other species. So that's rule number two. And rule number three, which is the most important rule as far as I'm concerned for me in this 30 years of experience that I've had throughout. That is, nature is in a fine balance. When we as humans disturb this balance, that's when natural calamities strike us. That's when the floods come. That's when the famines come. That's when the landslides happen. That's when, the global warming happens. That is because we as humans are disturbing this beautiful fine balance that the nature has created. And how do we disturb this balance? We disturb this balance by, terminating the entire, species of something. For example, in our greed to grow more crops, we as humans, we started using pesticides. When we use pesticides, as I told you before in the rule number 2, every species is dependent on other species. We kill the insects, and we kill the caterpillars, and we killed many ants and things like that. And the birds don't get their food because the little one of the birds, the chicks, the hatchlings, they don't eat the grains. Since childhood we are taught, चिड़िया आई और दाना लेकर गई अपने बच्चे के लिए. So the bird comes, picks up a grain and gives it to the little one, to the hatchling, to the chick. But it doesn't happen that way. It's not that way. most of the birds, most, I should say almost all of them, they peck up insects. And when they do that, and then they go back to their nests or wherever they live, and then they feed these little insects and little things to the little ones because they grow very fast. You must have seen the growth rate of the hatchlings of birds is very fast. Even when they are juveniles, they look like they are big birds because their growth is very fast. And that why? Because they feed their young ones with these things that we see. They're not mammals that the mother can feed milk to the baby. No. They are birds, and birds need to feed their babies with the little insects and all. Almost all, barring a very few species of birds who do not do it. Almost all the birds feed their young ones this way. So everything is nature. So these three rules I repeat. Number one, everything in nature is important. Every living thing, whether you like it or you don't. Number two, extinction of one species will lead to an extinction of lot more species behind it. So it's a chain reaction that happens. And number three, nature is in a very fine, perfect balance. And when you disturb this balance, that's exactly when you're inviting natural calamities. Because when the balance is disturbed, things go wrong. And Mother Earth then comes up with a vengeance. That's when the rain stops falling. Or when it rains so heavily that it leads to destruction of a lot of things. That's when floods come. That's when the temperature rises. That's when the global warming happens. We see temperatures as good as 48 degrees, going as high in summers. And that's a pretty bad thing to happen because global warming happens all over the place. Now, the glaciers are melting because of the rise in temperature, because of the global warming. And this melting of glaciers is again not a good sign because a lot of water is given out. And this water rises the sea level. And when the sea level rises, it eats away the portions of the land masses. And that's when tiny islands, which are like paradises in the middle of the seas and the oceans, they are slowly getting submerged. We are losing a lot of land because of it. Why? Because we disturb the balance of nature, the fine and the good balance of nature. And that's how it happens. Sparrows, talking about sparrows, let's talk about sparrows. Why don't we see sparrows, that domestic sparrows called the Passer domesticus or the house sparrow, what we call? I'm 49. When I was a kid, about 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, I used to see so many sparrows around, in and around my house. They used to come inside the house, they used to nest inside the house. We even used to see so many abundant sparrows around that when the ceiling fan was on, the sparrow would somehow make a mistake and get banged into the ceiling fan and it would die. Now we don't see sparrows. I got two sons, a 9-year-old and a 19-year-old who is elder. But the 9-year-old says, Abu, please show me a sparrow. I'm very thankful to God because the reason being that I live in a place which is surrounded by a very natural area. It's a very green and a lush green area. So I do get some sparrows. But I've seen a lot of urban places inside Ahmedabad, in the core city, where there are no sparrows at all. Now where did they go? What happened to them? That's because the humans, they changed their way of living. A lot of people say that there is this transmission of the mobile radiation and the television and the different kind of FM radios and this and that, and they are causing the damage to their brain, or they are, that's the reason why their eggs are not hatching and these are dying. But no, that's not the reason. It's the change in the lifestyle of the human being. About 40, 50 years ago, there were more people who used to live in villages. Now the sparrow, the cow, and our paria dog, the street dogs that we have, often don't live in jungle. They don't live in jungle. They always live with humans. So the sparrow always lived with humans for 10,000 years. Last 10,000 years. What happened here was, that we changed our lifestyle. Initially, 40 years back, 50 years back, there are more people living in rural areas. They had these mud roofs, mud houses, thatch roofs, and a ventilation from which the sparrow could go in and come out. And they used to live near their farmlands. There were no fertilizers, or the fertilizers were not in fashion to be used, and so they did not put the chemical fertilizer in their farms, so the sparrow could go and get the grain. And they used to build their nests inside the roofs, or inside the house, or over the roofs in the house of a farmer, and then they used to feed the young ones. And then there used to be open well in the farmland and near the house, where the sparrow could be accessible to water whenever it needed it. So it would quench its thirst right there. It would pack a grain from the farm and then come back to the thatch mud house, and where it would have made its nest, and then it would feed the grain with the little one, with the caterpillars and the insects that it would go and satisfy its own hunger by picking up a grain from the farmland. Now times change. Instead of these mud houses and thatch roofs, we started getting this concrete jungle, skyscrapers, huge building, aluminium sectioning, and because there was air conditioners everywhere, people started using the glass windows so they could see through the glass, but they would not let the cold air escape from their room because they had paid a lot of money for the air conditioners that they are using. So the bird could not get a place to live, the sparrow. It could not build a nest on the aluminum sectioning which decorated the building, or the glass that decorated the building. It was too slippery and there were no crevices in it, so it couldn't do that. And then we got the bore wells, and we could just, the bore wells are not open. The sparrow cannot go inside the bore well to get the water. When the wells were open, they could go and get the water. And then we started sprinkling a lot of chemical fertilizers which killed the insects. Now sparrow could not feed its young one with it. That is the primary reason why we lost the sparrows. In last 28 years, we have lost 67% of the sparrow population of the world. And this sparrow is a very useful thing in propagation of seeds. There are a lot of seeds that it eats, but it doesn't digest them. Not many birds do that. They eat the seeds, they go through their body, they get softened up, and when they poop, the seeds fall off, and that's when they germinate. Now the sparrows that got less, a lot of tree germination stopped, so there are less trees. And that is why we are now going on a big spree of plantation. Everywhere you go, so people are planting trees. Monsoon is arriving, they are planting trees. Why? Why was this need? Because we lost many trees. The primary reason, the humans cut more trees to enlarge their urban areas, to make roads, to make bridges, to make skyscrapers, to make huge buildings. And this is exactly what they did. So they cut their trees and they just got rid of it. Now no trees, no rain. Trees are the primary things that attract rains. Where there are trees, they give shade. Where there is shade, the temperature comes down. When the temperature comes down, what happens is there is a high pressure created. And hot air goes up, the cold air comes down. So below the trees is cold air, good atmosphere. The hot air goes up. Now when the hot air goes up, it creates a low pressure and a vacuum in the air. Now nature is a big equalizer. So everywhere where there is inequality, nature creates equality. So it attracts the air from elsewhere to equalize that pressure. So when it attracts the air, along with the air comes the clouds. Now these clouds are water vapor. So at certain point of time, when the equality is created, when the balance is created, these clouds get colder. When they get colder, the water vapor turns into liquid and falls down as droplets, what we call rain. Rain comes, more trees grow. Rain comes, drinking water is provided through canals, rivers, ponds and lakes. More drinking water, more trees, more animals, more birds, more prosperity. Even for humans, we are losing water. We are losing drinking water every day because we are cutting trees. And then what we are doing? We are creating these bore wells, and these bore wells go deep into the earth and they suck the water from the earth. Below, far below the land, 180 feet, 225 feet, 300 feet down. But what are we doing? We think that there is no dearth of water because we have a bore well. No, that's wrong. We are taking the water that rightfully belongs to the land. We are not taking the natural water from the rain because there is no rain, because there are no trees. So the water level in the land is going down. Now what happens when the water level in the land goes down? Again, the roots of the trees are unable to find the water. And that is, the trees don't grow because they don't get water. They cannot nourish themselves with the minerals in the water, because it's not just the water. There are lot many minerals that the trees get through the water, from the soil. But there is no water, and then we keep on lamenting that I planted a tree in my garden but it did not grow. How will it grow? It won't grow because there is no water. And then we are creating another borewell to make a garden. Again we are taking out the water that rightfully belongs to the land, and we are watering the same trees. Foolish, isn't it? Really foolish. More trees, more water. More water, more prosperity. Because there are three basic things without which no living creature can survive. Air, that is oxygen, O2. Water. These are the two major things. And the third thing is food. Hawa, pani or khorak, giza. If these three things are not there, we will not survive. We can survive without a house, we can survive without the clothes, we can survive without the cars, we can survive without the cell phones, we can survive without any gadget, any modern gadget in the world. But we cannot survive without oxygen, we cannot survive without water, and we cannot survive without food. And all these three things are provided by nature. When the balance of nature is left as it is without disturbing it. But we are disturbing the balance, and we are disturbing it very well. Less trees, less oxygen, because trees use the carbon dioxide to make their own food. A lot of primary students know about it, those in the primary classes, about the photosynthesis thing, and with the sunlight the trees make their food in their leaves, and so that's a very basic and a very important thing to learn. But when they make their food, they use this carbon dioxide, which is not good for the breathing of living creatures, be it reptiles, be it birds, be it amphibians, be it insects, and be it humans, mammals. But when it uses this carbon dioxide, it breaks up this carbon dioxide and gives out oxygen, the trees. So the trees are providers of oxygen, which is the most primary need for survival of any human thing. So less trees, less oxygen. Less trees, less water. Less trees, less shade. Less trees, more heat. So the primary thing is to plant trees. And don't plant trees haphazardly. No, never do that. Study them. How do you study them, and what do you study? You study because we are in a certain part of world where the seasons and the atmosphere of this part of the world is pretty different from what it is in the other part of the world. Let's say, for example, if we take an example of a country, Canada. Canada is a very cold country, and the trees out there are different. The trees in India are different because we are a warm country. We have 3 primary seasons here which keep on rotating. So we have to study which are the trees who for millions of years have evolved in this part of the world, and we should plant those trees only. They are called endemic trees. But if we keep on planting trees which belong to certain other part of world, only because they are ornamental, only because they are decorative, they are of no use except giving some good colorful flowers or sometimes fragrance. But none of our insects or our birds or our herbivore animals would ever go to it to eat something from it, because for millions of years they have evolved to live on the endemic trees and plants only, not on the exotics. Not on the exotic species of trees. The endemic species, the banyans, the peepals, the pongemias, or the the kanji, or there are many other species like the drumstick, the saragua. We call them the saragua or the drumstick. These are the kind of endemic plants and trees that you should plant here, and they would then circulate the nature, and that's when they would survive, because on this endemic trees and plants grows those fruits and those vegetables and those seeds which for millions of years our insects, our birds, our bees, our herbivore animals, and our people, the humans living in this part of the world, they have learned to live on them. Their body has learned to respond on them, and those fruits are useful to fight our heat, to fight our cold in this part of the world, to live up to our temperatures and our atmosphere in this part of the world. So if we try to plant more kiwi trees or the dragon fruit trees or whatever you call these and exotic ones, these fruits wouldn't give us those immunity or those fighting capability to different diseases. These fruits don't give us that, because they are meant for an atmosphere of the different part of the world, the climate of different part of the world, not this part of the world at all. Here we can use the mango. Here we can use, as in the vegetable, the drumstick. These are the fruits that we should plant here and we should eat, or the vegetables as of that matter. So these small finer points have to be remembered if you really want to make this part of the world a livable place. If you really want to reduce the heat or the global warming that is rapidly happening in our part, actually it is happening globally. There are few more so-called progressive countries of the world who have done worse than what we have done. We have done far better than them when it comes. But we are smaller culprits at times when compared to some of these so-called developed countries of the world. But then there are countries who are not developed but uneducated and far below poverty level, and they are even doing worse. So that's the problem with us. The education, the primary education is a problem. And when I say education, it's not the education that you go to school and take it. No. It's an education which you should learn all by yourself, by taking keen interest in nature, by taking keen interest in the wildlife, by taking keen interest in the conservation, because the world needs conservationists. Why? Why do humans need to come out as conservationists? Because it's the humans who have destroyed this world. It is we who have hunted animals. It is we who have uprooted and cut the trees for our sake, for what we call as, progress or modernism. Skyscrapers, bridges, flyovers, grounds, space for schools. People just cut trees in their backyards and in the gardens in the front, for a silly reason. Why? Because probably this tree in autumn is sending down a lot of leaves and are our front yards and the backyards are getting dirty because of it. How can it get dirty? Leaves are natural organic stuff. And organic stuff is always a good stuff. It can never make anything dirty. Never ever. And just because the leaves are being shed and they would like to save their time and their energy, not keeping on sweeping it twice or thrice a day. And there is no need to sweep it. Let them fall there. They will decay and they will become good, compost, and it will be helpful for them. Someone has just said no sparrows are seen. I just discussed it a while before, because it's because of our way of living that we have changed. We don't have the mud roofs or the thatch roofs or the mud walls and the open ventilation for the sparrows to go inside and live and make nests. And we don't have the open wells now so that the sparrow can go and have water. And we don't have, we are using this chemical fertilizers which are dangerous and they kill the insects and caterpillars. So the sparrow cannot take the food, as in caterpillars and insects, for its young ones. And that's why the sparrows are getting less. We have changed our way of living, and that's the reason. So that was a question by someone. I hope you got. And sparrows don't live in jungles; they live with humans. So this is a repetition for someone, for the benefit of someone that I just did, And then there is another question from someone. I missed it. Anyways, so this is the importance of learning wild and learning nature, and remember, when you're in the house, when you're using your air conditioners, the air that you're breathing is never a natural one. It's something that the machinery is taking up a natural air and forcing it into you and into the room, and then taking back the other air and throwing it out in the exhaust. Now this is not something that is natural. Remember, the human body is made by nature to adapt itself. There are people who are living and thriving in temperatures as high as 50 degrees centigrade on this planet. The human body adapts to that living condition. Then there are places on this planet where there are minus 35, minus 40 degrees Celsius, and there are people living there. So the human body adapts to it. So if you stop using the air conditioners for a couple of years, your body would adapt to the change in climate. I haven't used air conditioners for 15 to 20 years now. I've given it up, because that's the way you teach your body to adapt to the changing climate. And because I don't use air conditioners, I'm satisfied for myself, because I'm not contributing to the destruction of our layers in the air, the layers which saves us from the ultraviolet rays of the sun. We are getting holes in the ozone layer up there because of the emissions of different kind of gases from the air conditioners. I never drink water from the refrigerator, because that's not the right way. I boil my water from the taps, because I cannot go every day to the pond or a stream or a river. So from the tap, which again is contaminated, because the municipal corporation uses certain chemicals to kill all the germs inside. But I boil it and then I put it in an earthen pot and drink. And believe me, I never suffer from cold and cough. Seldom. I do, very less. Why? Because I don't sleep in the AC and I don't drink the fridge water. Water from the refrigerator. And there are many people like me who do that. I'm not the only one. There are many good people who do that, and they walk as a lesson, and I myself learned it from them. I was a big fan of cold water, chilled things. I want chilled things, I want chilled water, I want chilled cold drinks. Now, I learned it with experience. Drink the room temperature water and your body will adapt, and you won't be complaining of cold and cough. You won't be complaining of infections, because your body is not busy fighting against the cold water that is getting in, or the cold atmosphere in a hot season. So in summers the ACs are on. But till the time you are in the office or in the car or in your house, the ACs are on. Your body is having a nice time because you are having some nice air. But as soon as you go out, nature is not an air conditioner. It's summer and it's hot. So all of a sudden your body has to fight a change in temperature. Now body starts using that. It's all its energy in fighting it. And then to adapt it. And in no time, you again come back. So again from hot to pretty cold. And again your body is fighting it. You're losing a lot of energy. And the body is going through a lot of stress and fatigue when it's doing that. And that's when it leads to kind of lower blood pressures, diabetes. It's leading to, migraines. It's leading to your eyes giving off. And at the age of 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, you start getting glasses on. Because your body, how much can your body do for you? Your physical self. So, that's about it. Conservation of nature is something very important in your life. A basic knowledge. One doesn't have to go through books and one doesn't have to go through higher studies knowing it. It's a combination of basic knowledge of some good books on nature, on wildlife and conservation that you do. And the most important is your own common sense. You are a human. You are a product of nature. You know the human body has to be adapted with the change in climate. You know that you need trees to stand below it when it's too hot. You know you need a rat. You know you need a snake because they all have their roles to perform. If there are no snakes in the world, you know what happens? There are rats in the mouse field, in our fields, in our farm fields where we grow our crops. Someone has to keep these rats in check. Because one rat in 1 year could produce about 600 another rats or mice in just 1 year. Who puts them in check? It's the snake. The snakes puts them in check. Because if they grow at that alarming rate, they would outnumber any species in the world. They would eat away anything that is there in your farmland. And if there's nothing in the farmland, it's all eaten up by the mouse and by the rat. What will the humans eat? They would eat away all the fruits, climbing the trees. They would eat away all the vegetables, climbing the herbs and shrubs, digging up the earth, and even eating away things that are growing below the earth, which are edible for humans and other animals. There would be nothing left to eat. The snake has a role to perform there. It keeps the balance of the nature, which I have been talking about with you a while ago. They help in creating the balance of the nature, whether you like it or not. Some people don't like snakes. I, 30 years back, was scared of snakes. I did not like them. I found them to be very slimy and scary. But it was just a small thought in my mind that every living thing is important. I started handling snakes and rescuing them. There's another myth in the society that the carnivore animals and the raptor birds, which kill other birds and small animals, shouldn't have a right to live. No, it's not that. It's their food. They need it. Because if a tiger or a lion or a leopard or a bear or a wolf or a hyena, which are carnivores in nature, if they don't kill the herbivores animals and eat them, what would happen? The number of herbivores would increase alarmingly, and they would need more food because the number is more. And when they eat more food, they would graze more. When they would graze more, they would eat off the jungles in no time. No jungles, no trees, no oxygen, no water, and the same problem that I've been discussing with you guys. So they are important in keeping the check on the growing numbers of the herbivore animals. The carnivores are equally important. They keep them in check. That's very important. We have to remember it. We always have to remember this basic thing. It's no rocket science. Loving nature, learning about nature is no rocket science. It's all about common sense. It's all about reading some good books by some people, some good authors, some people who have dedicated their lives throughout for the cause of nature, for the cause of wildlife, and for the cause of conservation. It's all about common sense. Am I doing right? Is this what I'm doing is right? Am I cutting a tree? Is that right? No, it isn't. No tree, no oxygen, no water, no shade, no places for birds to stay, no places for insects to stay. And slowly the world is finished. So it's a beautiful thing to be, as I told you before, being a naturalist or conservationist or a field biologist. It's a profession probably which doesn't earn you a lot of money. It's not a lucrative profession. You cannot become a billionaire by being a nature. Seldom I've seen someone being a billionaire. You gotta give your time, you gotta give your money, you gotta give your energy for the cause of the planet. But it's a very interesting profession. It's a very lovely profession. It's something that gives you a sense of relief deep within your heart, saying, oh, did I rescue a snake? Did I rescue an animal? Did I rescue a bird today? And I'm feeling good from within. There's also a myth about, there are people who are non-vegetarians and they say that they should not eat non-vegetarian. No, that's wrong. That's something I disagree. But in a very, very controlled manner. They can have their proteins from their non-vegetarian foods. They can have, chicken from the poultries and goats from the goat farms. It's fine with me. But they are reared to be eaten. And therefore, the protein supplements, those who wish to go that way, could go that way. But do not kill beyond proportions. Killing beyond proportion is when the balance of nature is disturbed. And that's when you lose it. That's when the plot is lost. The balance of the nature. I mean, if you need to make a road from a particular residential area, a shortest route to a hospital which can save life, if you cut the trees on that route, that's fine. But if you cut the trees only because you want to make a road, a 6-lane road with a flyover, and just because your city needs to look good and beautiful in the night with all the lights in the line and all the shiny road paints on the road, don't do that. That's wrong. But for every tree you cut, if you plant 10 more trees somewhere else, that's the right thing to do. And until and unless there is no dire necessity to cut the trees, don't cut them. Look after them. Make sure that you care for those trees. Me and my family, we have planted about, it is a staggering number, and I'm not boasting about it though, but we have planted a staggering number of trees and plants all our life. Me, my wife, and my children, both of my sons. And it's a very big number, remember. When I tell it to people, they just eyeballs pop out saying, have you done so much? And I said, no, I've done nothing. Because it's we humans who have, who have been very, very violent, very atrocious towards the natural world. And it's pretty shameful as humans. We encroach into the forest. The forests don't come into us. And then we complain about the wild animals coming and attacking us. We made houses and societies and our living areas, residential areas in places where there were forests before. We are the ones who made big, huge dams and stopped the water, and in our haste to create hydroelectricity and other things. We stopped the water supply going in the needed amount to some places where there were a lot of wildlife thriving. We dug up lands and made mines for coals and other minerals, iron and whatnot, diamonds. And then we destroyed the mother nature. We blasted it. For the sake of construction, all the silt that has been flowing down from higher areas to lower areas by the rivers, we have been collecting them in the name of the sand, because there is a particular construction site going on somewhere. And we stopped using the natural materials to make houses because we want flashy buildings. There are a lot of mistakes, and they cannot be undone overnight. It will still take decades and decades and decades to undo what we as humans have done. It will take decades, probably centuries, to undo the destruction that we as humans have caused to this place. So I repeat 3 rules. Everything in nature is important. You may like it or you not. Every living thing is important. Be it plant, be it insect, be it animal, be it reptile, be it bird. Number 2, every species is dependent on other species. So when you are terminating one single species, make sure that you be ready for the destruction of many other species around the world. And number 3, nature is in a fine balance. Through human greed and through human desire and through human want, do not disturb this balance by mining, by culling animals, by cutting trees, by creating these concrete generals in a way that you destroy nature. I hope whatever I said and what little amount of people just heard me, I hope whatever I said did come across to you, and I hope, pray and wish that over a period of time, a little bit from whatever I tried to share and what little I know is useful for you people somewhere or other. I would consider myself to be very lucky if at all it happened. I myself am a learner of nature, and till the time I walk to my grave, I'll always keep on learning about different things about nature, and nature is something that will keep on surprising me every now and then, and I would say, oh, I never knew that. So it's a very beautiful thing to happen. Conserve nature, save water. Saving water is again very important. Do not cut trees, do not harm animals, birds, insects. Let everybody have a right to live just as we do. I'm thankful to the Visamo Kids Foundation, to all of them, especially to Himalaya Acharya, who introduced me to be here and to come face to face on this online thing with all of you, and to share whatever little I know. Everybody has a right to difference of opinion, and I would respect people's right to the difference of opinion. But at the end of the day, nature is nature, and we should treat nature as we treat our parents or our children or our brothers and sisters or our friends. Thank you so much. This is Naturalist Haseeb from Ahmedabad signing off, and it was a pleasure to come and talk to you, and I'm very thankful to anyone who came online and saw me. All the best. Live and let live. God bless you all. Hope to see you all again.